Murderer Raymond Platt is expected to die behind bars after being convicted alongside three other men of the savage killing of Tony Ferns in an evil plot which ended with the Tyler being stabbed through the heart. 56-year-old Platt of Govan, Glasgow was sentenced to a minimum of 23 years after he was found guilty by jurors at the High Court in Glasgow. It was the most severe punishment handed down to the four men who conspired to kill 33-year-old Tony in April 2019 close to the victim's home in Thornley Bank. Judge Lord Fairley was in no doubt Platt should face the full force of the justice system, having racked up a chilling history of offending dating back more than 30 years, including what's now been revealed as an astonishing 3 murder trials. He noted the single fatal blow inflicted on Tony was callously delivered by Platt, who jurors held was no stranger to violence or the court system. Lord Fairley told the killer, "The Crown case was that the attack on Mr. Ferns was pre-planned and carried out with the intention of killing him. Having regard to the nature of the fatal injury and the force used to inflict it, the conclusion that Mr. Ferns was murdered was inevitable. The circumstantial evidence of your movements before, during and after the time of the attack similarly left no reasonable doubt that you were the person who carried out that murder. This was not, as is sometimes seen in these courts, a fight which got out of hand. This was a targeted and premeditated assassination." The judge went on to address what he described as Platt's appalling record for violence, involving the carrying and use of knives. It emerged Platt, who spent time in care as a child, had only been out of jail 8 months when he stabbed Tony to death in April 2019, leaving the victim dying in his mother's arms. He had been sentenced to 9 years back in 2013 for the attempted murder of Edward Bennett in Govan, who he stabbed and bludgeoned with a piece of wood after a garden party turned violent. Despite his horrendous criminal record, he was released more than 4 years early in August 2018 and quickly returned to his violent ways when he murdered Tony just months later. But Platt's dark past went back even further, and it was revealed to the court the Blade Fiend had faced trial in 1995 over the fatal stabbing murder of Daniel Harley in a taxi office also in Govan. Platt was eventually cleared, but 4 years later he was back in the dock after stabbing a man to death and keeping his body in his flat for days. Platt was initially convicted over the so-called body and carpet murder of 20-year-old Mark Hayes in the same area of the city. Platt lunged at Mark in November 1998, stabbing him in the heart, liver and lungs in an attack of such devastation the young man died almost immediately. Platt wasted no time worrying about the victim's fate as his life ebbed away, instead wrapping his mutilated body in a sheet of carpet underlay and bin bags as he set about saving his own skin. The monster cleaned the house of blood and fled the scene before Mark's body was discovered 3 days later on the living room floor of a property in Craigton Road, Govan. It was claimed the pair had clashed over a £500 debt. Mark owed Platt, who was also later accused of threatening witnesses. Platt was initially convicted of murder after trial, but the conviction was eventually quashed by appeal judges before Platt went on to plead guilty to the lesser charge of culpable homicide on the eve of a retrial. He was sentenced to 14 years. It emerged in that case that victim Mark was the nephew of gangland drugs baron John Healy, giving a glimpse into Platt's willingness to target even those with seemingly powerful underworld figures behind them. Platt's fearsome reputation was by then set in stone, with many in his home patch of Govan and the wider underworld afraid to speak out against him. One source said, "Platt is one of the most dangerous men in Scotland. His record shows that, and these are the only crimes he's been convicted of. He's the sort of bloodthirsty loose cannon that even gangsters are very wary of. His name strikes fear in Glasgow, even when he's behind bars." In sentencing him for Tony Ferns' murder, the judge noted previous punishments did not have any deterrent effect on Platt's willingness to carry and use knives with fatal consequences. He told Platt it would be up to the parole board to decide his fate when he is eligible for release just short of his 80th birthday. He added, "It is perfectly possible, therefore, that you will never be released, but that will be for others to decide." Judge Lord Fairley rejected a plea to have Platt's sentence backdated to September 2023 when he was remanded in custody. He said, "Having regard to the nature of this latest offence and the very significant aggravating factor of your record, the punishment part in your case will be 23 years from today." Maniac Platt, whose police mugshot reveals no hint of remorse, was caged alongside Robert Park, aged 69, Craig Cahoon, 39, and Joseph McCulloch, 50, over his most recent killing. Jurors earlier heard Tyler Tony, a popular figure in his hometown of Thornley Bank, had long blamed window cleaner Park for his disabled brother Mark being injured in a road accident 7 years earlier. There were a number of clashes between the pair before Tony tried to call a truce, but instead the window cleaner plotted with his trio of friends to kill Tony, who died from a fatal stab to the heart. Platt was caged for a minimum of 23 years, Cahoon and Park for 20 years, while McCulloch got a minimum of 18 years. Tony's mum, Phyllis Ferns, his partner Angela McCann, along with other relatives, were in court. Phyllis sobbed as her son's killers finally faced justice. None of the four showed any emotion as they were led handcuffed to the cells.